Terumos.
Based salad.
Based dollar. One may not separate truma from one kind for another, and if he did separate, his truma is not truma. All kinds of wheat count as one, and all kinds of figs and dried figs and fig cake count as one, and one may separate truma from one for the other. Where there is a priest, one may separate from the superior quality, but when there is no priest, one must separate for that which he keeps. Rabbi Yehuda says one must always separate from the superior quality. One should separate his truma a whole small onion and not half a large onion. Rabbi Yehuda says not so, rather half of a large onion. Rabbi Yehuda also seems to say one may separate his truma from town onions for the villages, but not from villages for the towns, since they are food of the upper classes. And one may separate truma from oil olives for pickle olives, but not from pickle olives for oil olives, and from unboiled wine for boiled wine, and not from boiled wine for unboiled wine. This is the general principle. If two kinds constitute kalayim, one may not separate truma from one for the other, not even from the superior for the inferior. But if they do not constitute kilayim, one may separate truma from the superior for the inferior, but not from the inferior for the superior. But if he did separate from the inferior for the superior, his truma is truma, except for darnel, for wheat, since it is not food, and cucumber melons are one kind, and Yehuda says two kinds. Okay.
Okay. Gimel. Hatorim kishos v'nim tes mara.
That
So
was three, right?
right. So a person takes truma from you can't hear me?
I hear you now. Yeah, I pressed the wrong button. Okay, sorry.
Okay, so he takes truma from cucumbers, and it turns out that later on when he wants to give it to the Kohen, let's say he looks at this package and he sees that it's gone bitter. Okay. Or similarly, avatir from a melon, vanimtza saruach, and it turns out that it's rotten. Um, so now your question is going to be, at what point did this become rotten? If he's not sure, if he knows for sure, let's say that it was that when he took it, it was fine, and later on it went off. That's on the truma. That's on the kohen, and it's too bad. But he didn't check. He didn't check when he took the truma, and now he looks at it and he's besafek. Again, the extremes. If he knows for sure it was fine, then it's not on him. If he knows for sure that it was rotten when he took it, then it wasn't valid. How can you take truma from something that's not edible? So the question over here is, there's a suffix in his mind. At what point did it go bad? Okay, so the situation is truma v'yachzor v'yitrom. So in order to cover himself for the doubt, that piece stays truma, but he has to take truma a second time on what's left.
Right.
Okay. Um, Hatorim, and now, just in terms of just a note here, which there's a bit of commentary on how does he dispose of that, because both of them are considered truma, but they can't both simultaneously be truma because either one is or the other is.
Right.
So what he would do is sell the second truma to the coin. I don't see the coin wanting the first one, unless it's
Right.
to his animals. He could feed it to his animals, um, but he would have to buy the second truma at the price of the value of truma.
Right.
Hatorim chavis shel yayin v'nimtzeis shel chometz. Similar case, he took truma from a barrel of wine, and by the time he gets it to the coin, it's gone sour. Now, the difference between this and the previous case is that vinegar is still usable, it's still edible. There's a technical problem over here, is that it's possible that wine and vinegar are considered separate species, which means that you would not be able to take vinegar for wine. Um,
Mhm.
it's because either it's a separate species or it's just simply inferior. Although if it's just inferior, then we said that, okay, accidentally, if you took inferior, we said that's actually works. Anyway, so back into the Mishnah, the halacha says, Im yadua shehaisa shel chometz ad shelo trama. If he knew that this was that it was vinegar, um, and before the time that he took it, ain't a truma. That's no good. Okay, because why? This is, as I said, because it's considered like it's a separate species. You cannot exempt wine by taking by taking vinegar. But if it went sour after he already separated it, harei zot truma. The question is im safek. So you don't know when the wine turned sour. Truma v'yachzor v'yitrom. So once again, it takes that in order to cover himself with the safek, he has to consider truma and go back again and take truma from the wine.
Mhm.
Arishona eina medamas bifnei atzma. Now, the first, so now because you've got two in this situation, you've got a safek. You've got a safek whether the first one is truma or the second one is truma. One of them is truma, but not both.
Right. Right.
Okay. So now, if the first piece falls back into chulin, then ena medamas bifnei atzma. It does not form a meduma mixture by itself. Why? Because the basic halacha of the Minat Torah, truma is batel barov. You just need
Mhm.
a majority, and the truma is considered like it's disappeared. Okay, but midrabanan we said that it needs 100 against it. Okay, so now in this case where you've got safek truma, Chazal will make kill. They said we'll assume that this is not this may not be truma. Therefore, it's batel barov and move on with your life. And furthermore, if he accidentally consumed some of it, does he have to repay it, restore it with an extra chomesh, which is the halacha if a zar ate druma vadai, he's to pay it back plus a chomesh, and the answer is no because it's a safek. And the same thing goes for the second one, because the second one has got exactly the same suffix. We're not sure if this is truma or if that is truma, so it does not cause meduma. And if a zar ate it, then he does have to restore it, but not with the extra chomesh.
Okay.
Okay. Base. Nafla achas mehen lesoch hacholin. So again, we're still talking about this case of two trumas that were taken, and we're not sure which one is the real truma. Okay, so if one of them fell into the chulin, eina medamatan. So just like we saw in the previous Mishnah, it's just repeating the halacha over here because it's going to come along with a whole bunch of other halachas. So he said it does not cause meduma. Nafla shniya lemakom acher. The second one fell into a different pile of chulin, or different. If it's vinegar or wine, it falls into a different barrel of wine. Okay, the same thing goes. Eina medamatan. Neither of them causes meduma. Naflu shtehin lemakom echad. However, if both of them fell into one place, then vada you've got some truma inside there. Medam os katana shebestehin. Then it causes meduma according to the shear of the smaller of the two. In other words, of the second portion, because the second portion was taken on the original minus the first portion.
Okay.
Okay. Hashutafin shetarmu ze achar ze. You got two partners who in a field, and they harvested their grain and they did miruach, and the one partner went and said, "Okay, it's time for us to take truma," and he went without the knowledge of the second partner, and he took truma. And now, and so he's got a portion of truma in his hands, and the second partner was unaware about this and said, "Oh, we'd better take truma." So he goes and he also takes truma off what's in the granary. Rabbi Akiva Omer, Trumas Shnehem Truma. He says that both of them have taken truma, except that what Rabbi Akiva is saying is that each of them basically took truma of his own portion. So even though each
Oh,
one thought that he was being mezaka the other one, but the other one clearly didn't have the intention to let him do it. So therefore, each one is effectively taking double truma of his own. So even though half of what he took is not actually truma, what each one has effectively got now is a meduma portion, because half of it is the truma that he intended to take for himself, and half of it is chulin, which he thought he was taking as truma for his friend, but is actually chulin. So now each one of them has got this mixture in their hands, and both of them have to give it to the kohen and sell the chulin portion therein to the kohen. Chachamim omrim, trumas rishon truma. only the first one is truma, and the whole thing is truma because obviously these partners must have had a standing agreement between them that whoever goes to take truma first takes truma, and once he's taken truma, it's mitukan, and the second guy's taking of truma is a meaningless act, and this is the halacha. Rabbi Yossi Omer. Uh, I beg your pardon. The halacha is going to be like what Rabbi Yossi is going to say now. Im taram harishon kashior. If the first guy took the full portion, in other words, we'll see what the typical portion is, but basically it's like 1/50th. Kashir shetarm chaver achar כך. So if Cashier, cashiers. Yeah, one in 50, correct. Okay, so if the first one took the shearer that was kavur by Chachamim, that he took 1/50th, then yes, then that is the truma of the whole thing. But if he took less than that, then it's Megale is das that he's only taking from his own portion because he didn't take the amount that Chazal told him to take. So if he took the first one, and truma sasheni truma, vim lo taram arishon kashira truma sasheni truma. So then it's showing that he was only taking for himself, and the second guy is coming, and his truma is also a valid truma, and that is the halacha like Rabbi Yossi. Okay, back to Yud base.
Okay. If this is Shavias, if one slaughtered a cow and distributed it on New Year's Day, if the month was calculated, it is canceled. But if not, it is not canceled. The violator, the seducer, the sandal, and any act executed by the court are not canceled. If one loans against a pledge and hands his bills to the court, they are not canceled. Pro's bill is not canceled, and this is one of the measures which Hillel the Elder instituted. When he saw the people refrain from lending to one another and thus violated what is written in the Torah, beware that there is not a base thought in your heart. Hillel instituted the Pro's bill. And this is the substance of the Pro's bill. I transmit to you so and so and so and so, the judges in such and such a place, and that any debt due to me I shall collect whenever I wish, and the judges sign below, or the witnesses. Okay. Lion. Base. Silk and bath silk do not come under the prohibition of Kalayim, but are forbidden on account of appearances.
Oh, yes, beg your pardon, you're right. Carry on.
Appearances. Mattresses and pillows do not come under the prohibition of Kalayim, provided one's flesh does not touch them. And there is no exemption for casual wear of Kalayim, and Kalayim may not be worn even on top of 10, and even to evade customs dues. Hand towels, scroll wrappers, bath towels do not come under the prohibition of Kalayim, and Reb Eliezer forbids. Barber's towels are forbidden in account of Kalayim. Shrouds for the dead and the back paddle of a donkey do not come under the prohibition of Kalayim. One may not put a pack saddle on the shoulder, even to take its tongue out on it.
Okay. Oktin.
We're going to finish this tomorrow? Yeah.
Could be. If so, following Kilayim is Shvius.
Yes, okay. All right. What's good? Okay. Olive. The pundicle of figs, dried figs, chickpeas, and carobs, these contradict tuma and convey tuma and combine. Rabbi Yossi says even the pundicle of a gourd. The pundicle of pears, crusted milim, apples, quinces, and sorbs, and the pundicle of a gourd. The hand breath, the pundicle of an eggplant, the breath, a hand breath. If Eleazar, the son of Zadok, says 2 hand breaths. These contract tuma and convey tuma both, but do not combine. And all the other punticles do not contract tuma, nor do they convey tuma. Okay. Olives that one preserve with their leaves are tahor because they only soak them for their appearance. The hairs of cucumbers and its blossoms are tahor. Rabbi Yehuda says, as long as the cucumber is by a merchant, it is tameh. And all pits contract tuma and convey tuma, but do not combine. The pit of a moist date, even though it is protrudes, combines, but the pit of a dry date does not combine. Therefore, the membrane of a dry date combines, but the membrane of a moist date does not combine. A pit of which a portion protrudes, or that which is opposite that food, combines. Okay. A bone on which there is meat on which there is opposite the food combines. If meat was on one side of the bone, Rabbi Shmuel says we view it as if the meat surrounds the bone in a ring. But the Kachamim say what is opposite the food combines, like wild rosemary, hyssop, and savory.
Oros.
Oleos. Gimel Aleph. If any of the items that convey tumah through an ohel were divided and brought into a house, Rav Joseph ben Harkinis rules him tahor, while the Chachamim rule him tameh. If so, how? I'm sorry, how so? If someone touches two pieces of animal carcass, each one half the size of an olive, or carries them, or in the case of a corpse, if someone touches a piece of flesh half the size of an olive and simultaneously pours a roof over it, another piece of half the olive, or he touches a piece of flesh half the size of an olive, and another piece half the size of an olive forms a roof over him, or he forms a roof over two pieces, each half the size of an olive, or the person forms a roof over a piece of corpse half the size of an olive, and a piece half the size of an olive forms a roof over him. Reb Dosa ben Harkinis rules him tahor, while the sages rule him tameh. But if someone touches a piece of corpse flesh the size of an olive, and simultaneously something forms a roof over him, and a different piece of corpse flesh, half the size of an olive, or one forms a roof over a piece of a corpse flesh, half the size of an olive, and simultaneously something forms a roof over him, and a different piece of corpse flesh, half the size of an olive, he remains tahor. Meir says, even in this case, Reb Dosha Harkinis rules him tahor, and the sages rule him tameh. Everyone becomes tamei in the situation of above situations, except where tumah contracted through such touch coincides with tumah contracted through carrying, and the cases in which tumah contracted through carrying coincides with tumah contracted through ohel. This is the rule. Anything in the same category is tamei, whereas those in different categories remain tahor. A laden full of coarse powder was scattered inside a house. The house becomes tamei, and Reb Shimon declares it tahor. If a quarter log of blood was absorbed into the house is tahor. If blood was absorbed into a garment, or if a quarter log of blood comes out when the garment is washed, the garment is tamei, but if not, it remains tahor, because whatever is absorbed cannot come out as tahor. A quarter log of coarse blood was spilled in the air, and if the place where the blood spilled was on an incline, and a person formed an ohel over part of the blood, he remains tahor. If the blood was in a crack, or if it congealed, the person becomes tamei. If the blood was spilled onto the threshold of a house that inclines either inward or outward, and the house forms a roof over it, the house remains tahor. If the blood was in a crack or congealed, the heart of the house becomes tamei, and every part of the corpse is tamei except the teeth, the hair, the nails. While they are connected to the body, they are all tamei.
Okay.
And Dios. Okay, base Gimel. He who testified about a small village that was adjacent to Yerushalayim, and there was in this village a certain sage and he would lend money to all the villages, and he would write in his own hand of a sign. When the incident came before the common, they said permitted it. And from this testimony, you may learn incidentally that a woman may write her own get, and a man may write his own receipt, because the validation of a document is effected only by its signers. And a Reb Kalnina testified concerning a needle that was discovered in the flesh, that the knife and the hands are tahor, but the flesh is tamei. And if the needle was discovered in the excrement, everything is tahor. Reb Yishmael stated three things before the sages in the Academy of Yavna. The first testimony concerning a beaten egg that was put on top of a vegetable of truma, that it is connection, but the egg was like a helmet. It is not a connection. And if Reb Mishna also testified concerning an ear of standing grain in the reap section of the field, and the tip of this ear reaches the standing section, if he cut it together with the other in standing grain, it belongs to the owner, but if not, it belongs to the poor. Reb Mishael testified concerning a small garden that is surrounded by trellis vines, that if there is in this garden space for the grape harvester, and the basket here, and a space for a grape harvester, and a basket here, he may be sown. If not, he may not be sown. There are three things the disciples decided before Rabbi Yishmael, and he would not state either a prohibition or a permit regarding them. And Rabbi Yeshua ben Masas clarified them. They asked about one who squeezes a boil on the Sabbath. One Ridma testified, if it inherent it is to make an opening for it, he is liable. But if his intent was to move the pus from it, it is not liable. And if they ask the law regarding one who takes a snake on the Sabbath, who traps the snake on the Sabbath, then Yeshua ben Maisa clarified, if he is involved with it so that it will not bite him, he is not liable. But if he traps it for additional purposes, he is liable. And they asked the law regarding sealed pots, for Yeshua Messiah declared that in the tent of a corpse they are tahara, but in their tent they are tamei and carried by a zav. Ezli Elam ben Zamek says they were also tahara when carried by a zav because the processing had not been completed.
Okay.
Okay, getting a little tongue tied there.
Yeah. Okay.
Uh,
Megillah.
okay, base. If one read it discontinuously or while half asleep, he has fulfilled his obligation. If one was writing it, expounding upon it, or correcting it, provided he had intent, he fulfilled his obligation. If not, he did not fulfill his obligation. But if it was written with oil, ointment, vermilion, gum, or ferrous sulfate, or on paper, or on unfinished parchment, he did not fulfill his obligation unless it is written in Assyrian script on parchment and with ink. A townsman who went to a walled city, or a city dweller who went to a town, if he intends to return to his home, he reads at the same time as in his home. If not, he reads with them. From what part of the Megillah must one read in order to fulfill his obligations? Reb Meir says all of it. So Reb Yehuda says from there was a Jewish man, and Reb Yossi says from after these things. All are qualified to read the Megillah except one who is deaf, an imbecile, a minor. One Reb Yehuda declares a minor qualified. We may not read the Megillah nor circumcise nor perform ritual immersion, nor sprinkle purification water. Similarly, a woman who can count a day corresponding to a day may not immerse herself until the sun is risen. However, if any of them did so after the first ray of dawn appeared, the act is valid.
Okay. And we're done.
Have a great day.
Sure.
Enjoy.
Okay.
Bye. Bye.